Hello again. This is Traditional Muzzleloader. My name is Steve Sells. Our topic today is flints. I'm going to show you how I install a flint into the jaws of the cock and how I nap a sharp edge back onto the flint after it becomes dull. I'll also try to answer the many questions I receive concerning flints. So one question I'm asked very often is how many shots can I get from one flint? And I honestly don't know. When I ordered my first flintlock 10 years ago, I ordered 24 black English flints from Track of the Wolf. Now this is a smoothbore gun. It's a copy of a Chiefs grade trade gun that I got from North Star West. I shoot this gun a lot. I know that I shoot it more than any other muzzleloader in my collection. And in the 10 years that I've hunted and shot competitions and trail walks and smoothbore matches, I have gone through that 24 flints one time and I napped them all back to a sharp edge, and then I'm starting over and I've used 6 of them. So those flints are lasting a good long time. Now my practice is when I hunt, I install a freshly sharpened flint and I snap it to spark it twice before I load the gun to go on my hunt. Now when I shoot matches, I typically will wipe the fouling off of the frizzen and off of the flint with a clean, dry cleaning patch. And I will pay attention, and if I see that the flint is beginning to get dull, I'll simply replace it with a freshly sharpened flint. Now I'm going to take this gun and place it in the cradle so that I can show you how I install the flint in the jaws of the cock and align it correctly. Well, this may be a little bit difficult to show you. So when I put the flint in the jaws of the cock, I put the cock in half cock with the frizzen forward, and then I'll put my leather around my flint, place the leather inside the jaws, and tighten the screw down just enough that the flint and the leather don't fall out. Now you want to get your flint positioned so that this edge of the flint doesn't strike the flat or the side of your barrel, and you may need to offset it in the jaws of the flint just a little. And then I check the position by closing the frizzen, and I want to square the face of the flint with the face of the frizzen, and I do that by holding the trigger down and holding tension on the cock and letting it come forward to lightly contact the surface of the frizzen, and then I will adjust the flint until it's square against the frizzen. Now I'll bring it back to half cock and I will try to tighten the frizzen screw down until it's snug and keep the flint aligned square to the frizzen, and it might have to be checked and adjusted a couple of different times before you get that exactly the way you want it. Okay, and you don't want it to overhang the frizzen a great deal. I hope you can see that. But the width of the flint should match the width of the frizzen and without hanging over. So once again, I'm going to check that, tighten it down completely. It's still contacting the frizzen squarely. Now I'm going to open the frizzen and let the hammer down so we can see the flint is not striking the edge of the barrel. Some folks say that the flint should point to the center of the pan. I'm not entirely sure that that's critical. Mainly is you want it to be square to the face of the flint and without overhanging. So that looks about like it's in the right place. From this view from the side, hopefully you can see that there's a very slight gap between the edge of the flint and the frizzen when the cock is in the half cock position. Now you can adjust that gap. If it's too close, you can use a thinner piece of leather. When the flint is new and it's full length, sometimes I like to cut a V-shaped notch from the back of the leather to allow the back side of the flint to contact the screw in the jaws of the cock, and that can move it back a little bit. But that small gap that you see there is sufficient, and when the cock is in full cock, you can see that it's going to strike the frizzen approximately where the flint was aligned when it was at half cock. Pretty close to that spot. And then again, with the frizzen open and you let the cock come down, you can see the position of the flint in relationship to the pan. So that should produce very good sparks. And you'll notice that I have my flint with the bevel up on the top side, and that allows my flint to strike a little more than 2/3 up the way of the frizzen, which gives it a long scrape. And of course, you know, if the lock is tuned and the geometry on the lock is correct, the arc of the hammer sweep will match the shape of the face of the frizzen, which gives it a long scrape and cuts off an abundance of sparks. So you've noticed that I position my flints with the bevel up. I ask often, which is the proper way, bevel up or bevel down? Well, it depends on the geometry of your particular lock. You do want your flint to strike the frizzen approximately 2/3 of the way up from the pan. And if bevel up puts that edge of that flint too low, just simply flip it over and put the bevel down. Now, you will often see or hear folks talk about knapping a dull flint sharp, and some folks will do that with the flint in the jaws of the cock. They'll use the back edge of their knife or perhaps a little brass or steel knapping hammer. A caution on that is if you're using a steel tool like the back of a knife or a steel little knapping hammer, be aware that that can spark. So I would recommend you not do that with your gun loaded, and if that's how you're going to do it, keep that muzzle pointed downrange in a safe direction. I prefer not to knap the flints in the jaws of the cock. I simply replace the flint when it's getting dull with one that has a fresh edge. That's easy and quick enough to do. In the field, I carry a few extra flints in a flint wallet that I've stitched together from scraps of leather, or you can purchase them, but it holds 6 flints, and the little pockets for the flints keep them from getting bumped around and knocking the edge off. And of course I have a small turn screw. This one I made on a friend's farrier forge that fits the screw in the jaws of the cock, and that just rests down in the bottom of my shooting bag. So, you know, if I'm in the field and I need to replace the flint, I have everything I need, including a couple of extra leathers. Now, one of my friends that is an expert with flintlocks. He actually will glue a strip of leather to all of his flints, and that makes it a little easier and a little faster to replace one. But I'm going to show you how I like to knap my flints in the shop in one of my vices. So I prefer to do my flint knapping out in the shop. You don't want to do this indoors or any place where somebody might step on these shards of flint. They're as sharp as glass. And when I'm finished, I'll be sweeping up the floor and disposing of those with the shop vac. Be sure you wear safety glasses when you're knapping your flint. You wouldn't want one of those little chips to fly back and hit you in the eye. Okay, so I'm going to use a piece of leather to hold the flint in the vise. And I'm going to put the bevel down so that when I'm chipping off the flakes, they will be removed from the beveled side, not from the flat bottom side. If you remove your flakes from the bottom, that will raise the edge and it can round off the edge rather than sharpen it. So I don't like to knap flints in the jaws of the cock in the field with, say the back of a knife or a brass hammer or anything like that, because it takes off larger flakes and that shortens your flint quicker. And then when the flint gets so short it doesn't fit in the cocks, then it's not scraping your frizzen at the proper angle. When a flint gets dull in the field, I just put another flint in there rather than try to knap it back. It's not any quicker to knap one than it is to put a new flint in the jaw. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with this little tool, which you can make a tool to do this. I just purchased this one because it was convenient. But I'm going to set it up against the edge of the flint and give it a tap with this leather mallet and take off a small flake from the edge of the flint. And I'm going to go all the way across, and I try to keep the edge of the flint square or level, but I find that if it's a little serrated, it doesn't hurt a thing, it still works just fine. The one thing I don't want to do is leave a point sticking out at the sides. So you see that the flakes coming off are very small. And that's already feeling sharper. Really, that's good. Take a little bit of that corner away. That flint's sharp enough to spark many more times. Okay, so when I take it out of the vise, you can see, hopefully you can see, that the flakes were removed from the top or the bevel of the flint. And that's going to keep my sharp edge flush with the flat bottom of the flint, rather than raising the edge up and rounding it off as it would be if you were flaking it from the top. That would remove flakes from the bottom of the flint, which I don't care for. Now that's sharp enough, if I were to put any pressure on it, it would cut. And that's all there is to it, and that's probably the second time this particular flint's been knapped. I'm not sure how many more times I'll be able to do it before it gets too sharp, because I haven't gotten there yet. Another question I am asked frequently is concerning the different types of flint. There are French amber flints on the market. There are flints that are cut with saws. And I don't have any experience with those. I've never used them, and I don't know anyone who uses those. I hear that the French amber flints are harder than the black English flints. I don't really know. so I can't speak on that. I would suspect that if you have to have a harder flint to get sparks off of your frizzen, that perhaps your frizzen is not tempered properly. Now, another thing that I'm asked about often is a lead wrap instead of a leather wrap on the flint. Well, the leather wrap is necessary in order to give some grip between the jaws and the flint so it will remain in place. The people who make these custom locks do not recommend using lead. Lead will add weight and mass to the cock, and that can bend the neck or even break it because of the additional inertia. And the last thing you want to do is break your cock. So I would recommend that you just stick with leather. I hope our video has been helpful for you today. I hope I've answered your questions. In the next video, I'm going to discuss issues that affect the reliability of your flintlocks, some of the things that can cause misfires and hang fires. And I'm going to discuss some differences between a good quality custom built lock and the factory produced locks that are imported. And I'm going to share with you a secret that the makers of those locks don't want you to know. So you may wish to subscribe to this channel in order to catch the next video. Until then, remember to shoot straight and keep your powder dry.